So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths Higher Practice paper of 2023, Set 3, Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now as always I'll include a question breakdown in the description below so you can see which question refers to which topic. So let's get started on this GCSE Practice paper for 2023, Set 3, Paper 2, which is a calculator paper on the higher tier. So looking at question 1, it says simplify, and then we've got a to the power 4 times a to the power 6 all divided by a to the power 3. So what we need to do here is simplify the numerator. So when we're multiplying we add the powers, so that's going to be a to the power of 10 divided by a to the power 3, and then we take away the powers, giving us our correct answer of a to the power of 7. Moving on to question 2, it says that a coin is thrown 50 times, it lands on a head 30 times. Write down the relative frequency of landing on a head. Now with relative frequency it's all about experimental probability based on trials I've actually done. So it's going to be 30 over the total number of times, which is 50, and we can simplify that fraction. So it's 3 over 5, and which is the correct answer. Although it doesn't say for us to simplify our answer, they would accept any of those two fractions. Also, they may even accept 0.6 if you convert it as a decimal, but I personally would have left it as a fraction. Moving on to question 3, so looking at standard form, so we want to convert this ordinary number into standard form. So our first number is going to be 4.6 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus, because it's a small number, and then all I'm doing is just counting the number of decimal places till it gets to 4.6. Or alternately you can count the number of zeros at the front, in which there are 5, so it's going to be 4.6 times 10 to the power of minus 5. Then for question 4 we're just expanding these double brackets, so we've got x times x, which is x squared, minus 3x plus 6x minus 18, giving us our final answer of x squared plus 3x minus 18. Moving on to question 4, we're just solving this quadratic equation. So again, if we expand the brackets out, we get x squared, or actually we don't even need to do that. We just need to, it's already factorised, so we just need to make each bracket equal to 0. So I've got x equals 9 or x equals minus 4. So it's going to be 9 and minus 4 in any order. Moving on to question 5, it says the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. A steel sphere has a radius of 3 centimeters is shown. Work out the volume of the sphere. So it's going to be, if I just, what's happened there? So here it's going to be v equals 4/3. So all I'm doing is substituting r equals 3. So it's going to be 4/3 times pi times 3 cubed. And again, I would always strongly recommend students, because it's worth 2 marks, to actually write down that they have substituted 3 into the formula. And then if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 36 pi, or you could write it as a decimal, which is 113.097, and then it's entirely up to you whether you want to round it. So you could have 113.1 rounded to 1 decimal place. So any of those answers would be absolutely fine. Moving on to B, it says the density of the steel is 5.2 grams per centimetre cubed. Work out the mass of the sphere. So we need to recognise that density equals mass over volume. So to work out the mass, well, that's going to be d times v. Now the next thing we then need to do is just make sure that our units for the density and the volume are the same. So volume is going to be looking at the density is in centimetre cubed, which it is. So it's going to be straightforward and just do 5.2 multiplied by your answer in part A. And if you do that correctly, you should have an answer as a decimal of 588.106. Or you could leave your answer in terms of pi of 936 over 5 pi. So any of those answers would be fine. Moving on to question 6, it says Daniel invests 2,500 for 3 years. The compound interest rate is 2.9% per year. Which calculation works out the total value after 3 years? Circle your correct answer. So the correct one you should have circled is going to be the bottom right one. It then says Anna invests 2,500 for 3 years. Her interest rate is 3.5% for the first year, 2.3% for the second year and onwards. Whose investment is worth more after 3 years? So first things first, let's work out Daniel's, and that's going to be 2,500 multiplied by 1.029 to the power of 3. And if I done that correctly, I should have an answer of 2723.872 decimal places. Then if I then look at Anna's, well, Anna is initially investing 2,500. She's got 3.5% in the first year, so that's 1.035, and then she's got 2.3% for 2 years. Now you can do it separately, but I'm just going to do it all in one go, and which I should have an answer of 2707.89. So out of those two, which one is higher? Well, it's going to be Daniel. So Daniel's investment is worth more. Now moving on to question 7, it says the area of a rectangle is 158 square centimetres, and the question is asking us to work out the angle of x. Well, the first thing I need to do is work out the length, and to work out the length I'm going to use the area because I know that 10 times L equals 158, so L equals 15.8. So then, knowing it's a rectangle, I've got a right angle, I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA trig to work out x. So this is the opposite, this is the adjacent, so I'm going to be using tan. So I've got tan x equals the opposite over the adjacent. So then x equals the inverse of tan of 10 over 15.8. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an x value of 32.3, and that's to 1 decimal place. Moving on to question 8, it says the equation of a line is y equals 2x minus 1. Write down the point that is the intercept of the y-axis. So basically it's going to be minus 1, so it's going to be 0 minus 1. Moving on to question 9, it says the angles in a triangle are in the ratio of 1 to 2 to 5. The angles in triangle B in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. It says Anisha says that the n number of each ratio is 5, so the biggest angle at each of the triangles must be equal. Is she correct? Well, the correct answer is going to be no, because the number of parts, or should I say the total number of parts in each ratio is different. So in triangle A, the biggest angle is 5 over 8. So the biggest angle is 5 over 8, and in triangle B the biggest angle is it's going to be 5 over 12, and 5 over 8 is not equal to 5 over 12. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. If you then went on to work out the angles and compared it, then that'd be absolutely fine as well. So as long as you say no with a reason, then it's going to be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 10, it says that a 10k race was held. Information about the times achieved by women are in the table. And the question then, more information says that the mean time achieved by the men was 81 minutes. Compare the mean times achieved by men and women. So for this, what we need to do is complete the table. So we know the midpoint for this one is going to be 55, 70 and 90. We then need to work out the fx value. So we do that by multiplying the midpoint by the frequency. So it's going to be 55, 7 times 6, which is 420, or times 70 rather, and 90 times 13 is 1170. Now if I add all of those fx values up, I get an answer of 1645. So the mean time for the women is going to be 1645 divided by the total frequency, which is 20. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an average time of 82 minutes and 25 minutes. So then what's left for me to then do is to compare. So what I'm comparing is this mean time for the men and this mean time for the women. So, and as you can see that the mean time to the average time for men was quicker than the women's. So something along those lines would have been absolutely fine to compare both male and the women. Moving on to question 11, it says the price of a computer is reduced by 23%. The reduced price is £462. By how much is the price reduced? So for this, what we need to do is we need to work out the original price. So we do the new price divided by the decimal multiplier of a 23% reduction, which is going to be 0.77, and that comes up to an answer of £600. So £600 was the original price. Now the question's asking for how much was it reduced by, so I've then got to do 600 minus 462, and that gives me an answer of £138. Moving on to question 12, it says that in a crowd the ratio of home supporters to away supporters is X to Y. Write down the fraction of the crowd of home supporters. So here it's going to be the number of parts for home supporters, which is X, over the total number of parts, which is X plus Y. Moving on to question 13, it says 100 children are asked if they can ride a bike or swim. 20 say they can do both, 30 say they can do neither, and twice as many can ride a bike as they can swim. And when the question is asking us to complete the Venn diagram. So looking at this information, we know that all of the numbers in this Venn diagram need to add up to 100. And we know that 20 can do both, so 20 is going to be in the middle. And 30 can do neither, so we've got 30 here. Now, the information in the question says that the number of people who can ride a bike, so let's just label that as B and S, is twice the size of the number that can swim. So let's have a look at writing this down. Now we don't know these two values, so I'm just going to write X and I'm going to write Y. So from the facts that we know, well, we know that X plus 20 plus Y, that those two circles need to add up to 70 because 30 is outside. So if I neaten this up, I get X plus Y equals 50. I'm just going to put a little box around that for now. Now the second bit of information we know is that X plus 20 is twice the size of the numbers in the orange circle. So if I double the orange circle, then that's going to equal the same amount that's in the blue circle. So then expanding the brackets out, get X plus 20 equals 40 plus 2Y. Then neatening all of this up, I get X minus 2Y equals 20, which is another equation I've got. So now using those two equations, I'm now going to use simultaneous equations to then work out what X and Y are. So I've got X plus Y equals 50, and I've got X minus 2Y equals 20. So that if I take away the 2, I end up with 3Y equals 30. So Y equals 10. So I can write 10 there. And then I can then work out what X is. So using X plus Y equals 50, I know that Y is 10. So X must equal 40. And there is my completed Venn diagram. Now if you just guess those numbers and they're in the right place, then you would get the 4 marks. I may have gone off on a tangent, done a more complicated way, but hopefully it makes sense as to where we've got those numbers from. So moving on to question 14, it says here is some information about the times in minutes 80 teachers took to get to work. And question 14 is asking us to draw a cumulative frequency graph based on the information we've got. So the first thing we need to do is find the cumulative frequency value. So using the table now, I'm never quite sure why they've given you 2 columns. Maybe it's to help with the plotting, so you know which are the 2 values to plot at, in which the x one is always going to be the upper bounds. So looking at this then, the cumulative frequency value, we're just doing a running total. So the first one's going to be 21, then we add 30, which is going to give us 51, add 19, which is going to give us 70, and then our final one is going to be 80. Now your final one should always be the maximum value, which it is correct. So the points I need to then plot are going to be 20, 21, 40, 51, 60 and 70 and 90 at 80. So they're the coordinates I'm going to plot. And again, I'll try and be as accurate as I can. I might have to zoom out so we can see everything on the screen. So 20 and 21, which again, the scale they give me is not the best. Then 40 at 51, which is just above there. 60 is at 70, which is there. And 90 is at 80. Then what I then need to do is to then draw a curve starting from 0, which is our lowest bound of our lowest group. So it's going to be 0, and then just need to draw a connecting line. So for this, I'm going to try and be as accurate, but also show it on screen. Again, when you do this on a piece of paper, it's going to be a whole lot accurate. Try and do it as a singular motion, but I'll probably say that's probably not too bad. So there's our cumulative frequency diagram drawn. Now 14b, it says estimate the percentage of teachers who took over 45 minutes to travel to work. Now the key word here is over. Now when you're reading from a cumulative frequency value straight from the graph, it's always going to be that number or less. So for this, what I need to do is to use the graph to find out how many teachers took less than 45 minutes, subtract that from 80, and then I'll get the number of teachers that took over 45 minutes. So I find 45, which is going to be here. And then with a ruler, which I'm not going to use because it will extend the video length to about 5 hours, which is about there. So this is the key point. And if I then go across, this is the value that I'm looking for. Now, I would say that that number there is 55. But looking at the mark scheme, they will accept any answer between 54 and 60. So whatever number that is, the first thing you then need to do is take that away from 80. So whatever your 54 to 60 number is, in my case it's 55, so I'm going to take 80 from 55, which gives me an answer of 25. I then need to work out the percentage, so it's going to be 25 over 80 multiplied by 100. And if I type that into my calculator, 25 divided by 80 times 100, it gives me an answer of 31.25%. Now again, depending on the range, I would say an acceptable answer for that. So if I just do 80 minus 54 divided by 80, so I would say an answer between 32.5% and 25%. So let me do that the other way around. So 25% to 32. I've forgotten the first answer now. 32.5%. So any answer between that boundary of percentage will be absolutely fine, but I got 31.25. Question 15, it says ABCD is a rectangle. The x-axis is the line of symmetry, and it says circle the 4 inequalities that describe the region. So what we need to do here is, if I just zoom out ever so slowly, and there we go, is to write down the equations of each of these lines. So this line here is going to be y equals 4. This line here is, well, if it's a line of symmetry, this distance here is 4, which means that this distance here is also going to be 4. So that's going to be at y equals minus 4. Then looking at this line here, this green line, that's going to be at x equals minus 3. And this line here is x equals 5. Now what I then need to do is then decide where does this shaded area lie on either side of those lines. So looking at the green line, I can see it's on the left. So it's on the right, sorry. So I'm looking for where x is greater than minus 3, which is this one here. On the pink line, it's to the left. So I'm looking to replace that symbol with left there. And then I now all of these lines are dotted, so I'm not looking for less or equal to, not that that's an option. So then for that one, it's going to be not this one there, I'm circling the wrong one there. It's going to be x is less than 5, which is this first one here. Then looking at the two y graphs, this is below, so I'm looking for x is below minus 4, positive 4. which is this option here. And then for the claret colour, the marine red one, we're looking for above the line. So we're looking for y is greater than -4, which is that option there. Then moving on to question 15b, it says the graph shows the grid shows the graph of y equals x plus 2. On the grid, identify the region represented by, and then we've got our 3 coordinates here. So the first line I need to plot is y equals x plus 2. So again, I just need to pick 2 coordinates. So if I just go for 2 small numbers of 1, 0 and 1, so when x is 0, y is going to equal 2, and when x is 1, y is going to equal 3. So I need to plot 0, 2, which is there, and 1, 3, which is there. I've just noticed that I've plotted the one that's already been plotted, so that's all good. So the one I need to plot is y equals 6 minus x. So if we do x and y, and we've got 0 and 1. So when x equals 0, y equals 6, and when x equals 1, y is going to equal 5. So 0, 6 is here, and 1, 5 is there. And then what I then need to do is to draw a line, so connecting those points, in which I can do that freehand. Again, I recommend that you do use a ruler for this, and we're looking for a dashed line basically it should look something like that. Let me just label this as y equals 6 minus x, and I want below that line, sorry, above the line. And then the last one for me to draw is x is less or equal to 4, and that's going to be a solid line that's going vertical through 4. So the region that I want then, again this needs to be drawn with a ruler, is going to be this region here. It's there. Now moving on to question 16, it says PQRS is a rectangle with PQ parallel to SR. P and Q are on the x-axis and the y-ordinate of S is 5, and it says that the area of PQRS is 35 square units. Work out one possible set of the points for P, Q, R and S. Now as it mentions that there are possible solutions, so there's going to be multiple answers. I'm not going to go through every single one because obviously that's going to be near impossible, but I'm going to show you how you can check your answer to make sure it is correct. But it's definitely worth that if you're getting some understanding of this question, maybe check with the mark scheme. But again, because there's an infinite number of answers you can have, because obviously the x-axis has not been labelled with any information, there's going to be multiple answers. So although your numbers may be different to mine, you still may be getting it correct. So let's have a look at the information that we know. So if I just write down P, Q, R and S and just write down or structure the coordinates. Now let's have a look at the facts. Now we know that this line here is y equals 5. So that means that the y-ordinate for S and R must be 5. So I can definitely write that as fact. So here we've got S with a y-ordinate of 5, and we've got R with a y-ordinate of 5 as well. Now in terms of P and Q, we know that they lie on the x-axis, so therefore that's going to be a y value of 0. So here that we know then that the y-ordinate for P and Q is going to be 0. So here we've got our y-ordinates for basically P, Q, R, S. Now the next thing we then need to do is to use the second bit of information that we know, which is this, that the area of PQRS is 35 square units. Now we know that the height of the rectangle is 5. So 5 times what gives you 35? So that means that the horizontal length must be 7. So here for this, what we need to know is that P and S, will have the same x-ordinate. So this value here and this value here must be the same. And we also know that R and Q will have the same x-ordinate too. So these two values here must be the same. Now what we must know is that the difference between the red and the green must be 7. So here the difference between the green and the purple must equal 7. So from this, if we just make up some numbers, so we know that the x-ordinate for P and S has got to be greater than 0 because it's beyond on the right of the origin. So here what we can then write, if I just write down the numbers, so for P we've got purples, let me just go back to the purple pen. So all that's left for me to do is then pick a value that's greater than 0 for my x-ordinate for P. So I'm just going to go for the number 2. So then I could say that P is going to have an x-ordinate of 2 and S is going to have a x-ordinate of 2. And then to find the x-ordinate for Q and R, all I need to do there is just basically add 7 to whatever number I've picked for R, P and S. So here I'm going to have 2 plus 7, which is 9, and 2 plus 7, which is 9 again. And that's how we get our coordinates for these questions. As I mentioned, there are multiple answers, so as long as you follow the rules, then it should be okay for you to get them correct. But what I've written in blue must be correct. They must be 0, 0, 5 and 5. Marked correctly. Moving on to question 17, it says, I'm thinking of two different integers. They are both less than 10, and it says the lowest common multiple is 4 times the largest number. Work out the pair of numbers. So let's have a look at this. Now for this, again, there's a couple of combinations you can have. Now because it's going to be a multiple of 4, let's just assume that the smallest number is going to be 4. Now for it to be the lowest common multiple is going to be 4 times the largest number. So if we're multiplying by 4, we know then, and 4 is the smallest number, we know that it's going to be a multiple. So the next thing we've got to do is make sure it's the lowest common multiple. Now in order for that to be the case, then the next number needs to be bigger than 4, but also an odd number. So it can either be 4 or 5, or it could be 4 or 7, or it could be 4 or 9. So any of those 3 combinations would be absolutely fine. Moving on to 17b, it says A, B and C are different prime numbers. Is 6 the smallest possible value of n? Now the smallest possible value will be using the first 3 prime numbers. And the first 3 prime numbers are 2, 3 and 5. So 2 times 3 times 5 equals 30. So the smallest n can be is 30, not 6. So the answer is no. Moving on to question 18, it says f of x equals 3 to the power x and g of x equals 3x plus 7. Work out the value of f2 plus g5. So for this one, what we're doing is substituting 2 into the function. So we've got f and replacing the x with the number 2. So that's going to be 3 to the power 2 plus, and then if I substitute x equals 5 into g of x, I get 3 lots of 5 plus 7. Now if I start working out, 3 squared is 9, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 7 is 22, so it's going to be 9 plus 22, which is 31. For question 18b, it says work out the value of gf of 2. Now there's a couple of ways in which you can do this. You can either work out the function of g of f, or you could simply substitute 2 into f and then substitute the answer into g, which I'd probably say is going to be the quickest answer. So when f of 2, well, we've already worked that out as being 9. So then if we then do g of 9, we get 3 times 9 plus 7, which is 27 plus 7, which is 34. It then says determine the value of x for which we've got g of x equals the inverse of g of x. Now g of x was equal to 3x plus 7. So to work out the inverse function, I make it equal to y, and then what I want to do is make x the subject. So I've got y minus 7 equals 3x. So y minus 7 divided by 3 equals x. And then all I then need to do is replace x with the inverse of f and replace the y with x So this here is my inverse function of g. I don't know why I've put f there, so let me get rid of that and write g instead. So then substituting those two things into this, then what you end up with is 3x plus 7 equals x minus 7 over 3. So then multiplying the left hand side by 3, I get 9x plus 21 equals x minus 7. I get 8x plus 21 equals minus 7. Then 8x equals minus 28. And then so x equals minus 28 divided by 8, which gives me an answer of minus 3.5 or minus 7 over 2. Moving on to question 18d, it says one of these graphs is a sketch of 3 to the power of x. Which one is it? Well, the correct one is going to be C. Moving on to question 19, it says here are 2 closed containers. 4 tennis balls just fit in each container. Each tennis ball has a diameter of 66 millimeters. Which container has the least wasted space when tennis balls are inside? And it gives us the volume of a sphere, which is 4/3 pi r cubed. So for this, what we need to do is we need to, first of all, let me zoom out so we can see it all on the screen. So what I need to do is work out the volume of the 4 balls first, and that's going to be 4 lots of, and then substitute r equals 33, so it's going to be 4/3 times pi times 33 cubed. And so if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 191,664 pi, or as a decimal 602130.2144. Now from this, what I then want to do is work out the volume of the cuboid. Now if I go back to the diagram, so I've got 2 balls going in that direction. They've both got a diameter of 66, so that's going to be 66 times 2, which is 132. The height of that cuboid is going to be 1 diameter of the tennis ball, so that's 66, and then the length of that cuboid is again going to be 2 tennis balls, which is 132. So to work out the volume of the cuboid, it's going to be 132 times 132 times 66, and that gives me an answer of 1149,984. So then the space is going to be the area of the cuboid, which is 1149,984 minus, I'm going to write it in pi, in terms of pi, divided by that. And if I work that out, type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 547853.7856. Then if I repeat the process for the cylinder, so the volume of the cylinder. Now going back to the cylinder, well, the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times h, where h is the height. So the length of this is going to be 4 lots of 66. So 4 times 66, which is 264 millimeters. And the reason why the numbers are so big is because we are working in millimeters, not typically centimeters. And the radius again is 33. So looking at the volume of the cuboid, or the cylinder rather, I'm going to substitute numbers into that formula. So it's going to be pi times 33 squared times 264, and that gives me a total volume of 287,496 pi, or 903,195.3215. So then the space for this is going to be those two numbers take away, so it's going to be the volume, which is 287,496 pi, minus the area of the balls, which is going to be 191,664 pi, and that gives me a total space of 301,065.1072. So the question is, which one has the least amount of space, wasted space? So comparing this answer to this one here, which one's smaller? Well, it's going to be the cylinder. And there we go. Now, if you wanted to, you could, obviously one thing I forgot to do is put the units. But yeah, we'll be comparing those two numbers. Then moving on to question 20, it says the graph shows the speed of a mountain bike on a trail. Nick wants to calculate the distance travelled by the bike in the first 80 seconds. And it says he works out the area of the triangle with vertices 0, 0, 86 and 80, 0. Does Nick's method give a good estimate? Tick a box. So if you highlight the triangle that he's plotted by joining the vertices together, you can see that, well, distance is basically the area under the line in a speed time graph. So is this a good estimate? Well, the fact that you're working out the area of the triangle means that you're missing out this bit here. So I would go on a limb and say that the answer is no, because he is underestimating the distance covered, which is not spelled correctly, between 0 and 50 seconds. So something along those lines would have been absolutely fine. It then says use Nick's method to work out the estimate distance. So again, we want to work out the area of this triangle. Well, the area of the triangle has got a base of 80 and a height of 6. So using the formula of base times height divided by 2, we've got 80 times 6 divided by 2 gives me an answer of 240. It then says Helen uses a different method. She starts by estimating how many of the larger squares are in the region between the graph and the horizontal axis between 0 and 80. Larger squares are made up by 25 small squares, and her estimate is 30 squares. Complete Helen's method to estimate the distance. So for this, we know that one square is, if we go back to the graph, so if I pick one of these squares, that we know that the base is 10 seconds, and we know that the height of one of those squares is 1 meter per second. So then one little square is going to be 10 times 1, so that's 10 meters. So then we've got 30 boxes, so we do 30 times 10, and that equals 300 meters. And there we go. Then moving on to question 21, it says the value of a car in V pounds after t years is modelled by the equation of V equals A times K to the power of minus T, where A and K are constants. The value of the new car was £40,000 when it was new, and the value after 2 years is £15,625. Now the question is asking us to work out the value of A and K. Well, this value A is, if you know compound interest, that's going to be the initial value. So we know straight away that V is going to be £40,000. So A is 40,000. Now to work out K, what we need to do is we need to substitute for this value here. We know V equals 15625, and we know that T equals 2. So then if I substitute those two values into this formula, I get 15625 equals 40,000 multiplied by K to the power of minus 2. Now doing a bit of rearranging, we get 15625 divided by 40,000 equals K to the power of minus 2. And if I work that out, I get 25 over 64 equals 1 over K squared. Then we can do a bit of cross multiplying, in which we get 25 k squared equals 64. So k squared equals 64 over 25. I can then square root, and I get, oh, not 8, not 25, I get 64. Square root of 64 is 8, and square root of 25 is 5. Now we don't need to worry about plus or minuses, because we've already got negative power. We know that it's decreasing, so k equals 8 over 5, or we can convert that into a decimal as 1.6. Then moving on to question 22, it says AF is a straight line, A to F to E is in a ratio of 5 to 4, DE is parallel to CF, DE is equal to 2.5 CF, and we've got our vectors there. And the question is asking us to work out what D to E is in terms of A, B, and C. So let's have a look. So we want to work out what D to E is. Now, in order to do that, what I need to do is, using this ratio here, is I need to work out what C to F is going to be. Now, in order to work out C to F, I need to work out what A to C is, and, well, actually, I need to work out what A to F is. So let's have a look at working through this. So here we know that A to F, using this, is going to be is equal to 5 parts. So A to F, F to E equals 5 to 4. So we know that A for AF equals 5 FE. Now, in terms of F to E, we know that F to E is 2A. So we know that 5 lots of 2A equals, and it's going to be minus, sorry, so let me just change that to minus 2A, and because we're going in that direction, so that's going to equal 4 lots of A to F. So 4 lots of A to F equals minus 10A, so then A to F is going to be minus 10A divided by 4, which is minus 2.5a. So A to F, I can write on the diagram as being 2.5a. Then from this I can then work out what C to F is going to be. Well, C to F is going to be going from C to B, then B to A, and then A to F. Now C to B is 5C, and then B to A is minus B, and then A to F is minus 2.5a. Now I can't simplify that, so that is what C to F equals. So that's what this line here is. Now, because we know that it's parallel, well, we know that now that C to F, so D to E, using this here, so I'll just put a little arrow there. So we know that D to E, which is what I wanted to work out, is 2.5 times C to F, which is 5C minus B minus 2.5a. So then if I multiply out all of those, so I get D to E is equal to 2.5 times 5, which is 25 over 2, which is 12.5c, minus 2.5 times b, which is just 2.5b, and then I've got minus 2.5 times 2.5, which is 6.25a. And there is my final answer. Now you could give your answers in terms of fractions, in which you'd end up with 25 over 2c minus 5 over 2b minus 25 over 4a. So that would have been absolutely valid as well. Then moving on to our last question, it says 23, it says here is a graph of y equals f of x. The graph has a turning point of 1 minus 3. On the graph, draw the graph of y equals the f of x, where f is x plus 3. So all we're doing here is shifting the graph 3 squares to the left. So if I pick a coordinate that I know, which is this point here, I'm going to move that 3 squares, so 1, 2, 3, so that's now going to be here. Now in terms of looking at where this point here is, well, that's roughly about 1 3/4. So if I go 1 3/4, then that point there is going to be there. Then if I look at this intersection point and I move 3 squares there, so that's going to be roughly around about here. And then all that's left for me to do is to join those points up, and it should look something like that. Then for question 23b, it then says to the y equals 2x squared plus x minus 7 is reflected on the y-axis. Work out the equation of the reflected graph. Now, for it to be reflected, what I need to do is basically change the sign of x. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to replace x with minus x. So replacing that, I get y equals 2 lots of minus x squared plus minus x minus 7. Now, squaring a negative number will always end up with a positive value, so that's just going to be x squared. A plus and a minus become a minus, and the 7 stays the same, so it's y equals 2x squared minus x minus 7, and there is my final question.